Aideation, הפודקאסט ליזמים וליזמות מבית TPY Capital.
שלום לכולם וברוכים לפודקאסט שלנו AI Aideation. And I'm going to be switching to English, actually for the first time that we're doing this, for a AI Aideation podcast for AI entrepreneurs. Even though the guest in front of me has impeccable Hebrew, but the proficiency in English, I guess, is even higher than it is in Hebrew. So I'm going to welcome Michael Maoz in a second and introduce you. But what we're going to be speaking about today is agents, which is almost the biggest cliche in generative AI, a word that we hardly had heard about up to maybe a year and a half ago, and now has become a huge deal in AI. And I'm just showing one minor graph of Google searches AI all the way from the beginning of 2024 and all the way up to May 2025. And we're seeing the exponential growth in searches for AI agent. And another graph that we're showing here from Bond Capital, where they outline, Salesforce, Anthropic, OpenAI operator, Amazon. Obviously, Google has their own agent in deep search and the capabilities around agents. And part of the conversation today will be to understand what agents actually mean, and of course, what it means from an enterprise adoption standpoint, and then what it means to startup founders. So I am absolutely excited to welcome today Michael Maoz, who is Senior Vice President of Innovation Strategies for Salesforce. When he's not doing his day job, guiding the Service Cloud product strategy and advising clients on the state-of-the-art engagement strategies in the area of agentic AI, he searches for startups that might be complementary to become partners to Salesforce. So, Michael, thanks so much for coming here today.
And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, you've been around the proverbial block for many years. Maybe you want to share a little bit about your background and stuff that you've done prior to Salesforce. And the question we're being asked a lot, and I'm sure you're being asked a lot, is this time different? Is it different relative to everything that we've seen in terms of other technology cycles? And if it is different, why is it different?
Yeah, and I think it's starting with having been around the block, right? So I think that's a part of a blessing. I started here in development in Israel for many, many years, and then had the rare honor when I moved to Germany for a few years to do a startup that ended up being in the area of CRM, which is fantastic. We built it from zero with no investment. We didn't have a great TPY Capital to help us. And we built it from zero to about 140 people and $18 million, and it was a great experience. And then I moved to the United States, where I was one of the founders of the CRM practice there. And in 2001, I met this gentleman, Mark Benioff.
What CRM practice in Gartner?
In Gartner. Gartner,
yes.
Most of you will know Gartner Research. They didn't have a CRM practice. They mostly did supply chain and ERP and technology tools, but they didn't know what CRM was. So we went and built a pretty significant practice. And part of the thing we did was meet this company, Salesforce, and I started advising them and became the lead analyst there in 2001. So I got to work with this guy, Benioff, and eventually I came and joined the company where I've been for 7 years. So I've seen it all, from when we had no AI, when it was just triggers, when it was just a bunch of stored procedures and basically data on a screen, and you're on your own. So this time we have this great confluence of what we'll probably call infinite free intelligence. And I don't think there's ever been a time like that, when you've had, because of storage costs going very low, because the ability to operate on the data is almost infinite. And the AI itself is becoming so ubiquitous, baked into every single thing, from sensors and devices all the way to every application in the hardware. It's something we've never before seen, the confluence of network capabilities, connectivity, storage, and the ability to work on data and AI. It is unprecedented.
Right. So speed, right? That's, the speed of adoption of technology. We're seeing it on the consumer side. Run rate of OpenAI just hit $10 billion. A lot of it driven by consumers, but obviously they've got the enterprise business going. But beyond the speed, what we're also seeing are enterprises supposedly adopting this technology. I'm going to talk about what agents mean in a second, but they're also facing certain barriers. And I'm showing another graph also from the same report of barriers of adopting generative AI. And what we're seeing over the course of the last couple of quarters is actually a reduction in the barrier associated with technical expertise, I guess because technical expertise becomes more ubiquitous, and or because actually technical expertise is being substituted in it of itself by AI, and then a spike at the same time of barriers that have to do with risk or with concerns about being able to comply with regulation, which is still actually evolving. You meeting enterprises, how many Fortune 5,000 companies have you met over the course of the last 3 months?
3 months, I probably would guess I'm meeting about 8 to 12 a week. So I think
Okay, so we're talking about hundreds over the course of a quarter. What are you hearing from them? What is agent for the folks that you're talking to in large enterprises?
Yeah, and I think one of the pieces of data that you mentioned is in some ways misleading, in that the skills, which they would say, our skills gap is shrinking. Part of that is that they're not understanding the skills that they really do need. And one of the things they are seeing go up is governance and the data quality. They're seeing that, I say data is a little bit like water, right? You need to have pure water. If the water is not pure and clean, you don't want to drink it. You can use it for other things, but you can't use it for generative AI, because then you're going to have hallucinations. You're going to have policies, governance, privacy, security. There are all sorts of things you cannot do. And that brings us to the world of agents, because when you're doing, let's say, generative AI, you just want to summarize an email. You want to summarize a conversation. You want to find an answer from a PDF, extract it, ask a question and get an answer. That's all great, as long as you're not touching anything sensitive about the customer, sensitive stuff about your pricing, things that are private to your organization. Or if you want to capture the flavor of your brand, so the AI doesn't necessarily know your brand. You want to bake it in. You want to bake in ethical use. You want to bake in a certain sense of empathy. Those things take tremendous skills, and most of the agents today, that's not where they are. They're far from that. They're generic agents that, again, can do wonderful things, amazing things, but they're far from being customer-oriented.
What is agent in the view of the customer? And maybe you can walk us a little bit through who are the people within the organization that you're talking to? Is it today, or have you seen an evolution? The people that are adopting, the functions that are adopted have evolved over time? Is it the CTO? Is it CIO? Is it head of innovation? And when they're thinking about agent work, what does it mean, again, to the extent that there's something standardized that you see that is evolving?
And there's, of course, a wide range.
Yeah.
And one of the things you saw with agents is how they've evolved, because even a year ago, when people thought agents, they were really saying bots. And bots were basically doing things like very high-level macros. And you could think more of a predictive AI, and those were not very exciting things. They were cool. You could build a schedule for field technicians or for a call center. You could get answers to things. But now what we're seeing, generative is pretty cool, because you can take data from all sorts of sources. Again, given that it is clean, given that you know the provenance. So you can't take it from Reddit or take it from a post in Wikipedia or some external source, because then you could be violating all sorts of laws. But people have been doing that. When you want to move into agentic, when you really want to get beyond generating an answer, but you now want to do actions. So now when I'm speaking to you, in the same time, I could be completing an order form for you, or underwriting, or an insurance policy, or a mortgage. I can be doing all the actions. That's agentic, where one system is talking to another system. You might even get into multi-agent. So meaning my sales system is talking to your back-end billing system. My billing system is looking into your compliance system. And each one of them has their own agents. And that's where things get to be exciting. We can do things you never could do. And of course, who's buying that? At first, it was the lines of business, just like SaaS. The whole idea behind SaaS was
Right.
that you could take out your credit card and get a subscription. But now with the complexities that you mentioned around governance, now you're seeing the CISO come in. You're starting to see the security people and the CFO, and they're saying to the CIO, it's you who has to make sure, just like you keep the lights on, you keep the systems running.
Right.
You've got to, you and the CFO and the CISO, you have to keep us out of jail too.
Right.
So even though the need, the people I work with are salespeople, marketing people, experience officers, sales officers, they're working very much in tandem. The best is when the tech people are embedded within the line of business or they're working as a team. And the worst is where IT is out on its own. And the worst case is what you're seeing today, where you have agent swamps. So each one has their own little silo. They're building terrible, from an end-to-end perspective, all these islands, you're back to disconnected processes. And then the end result for many is that the goal of this great agentic future is not playing out because they have not started to think about it of what is the end-to-end process you're trying to pull together. Instead, it's islands.
So who is the buyer? So you're saying, CISO is becoming involved, but who actually signs the check? When you're seeing people that are buying agent workflows today, is it within the function, sales, marketing, IT, or is it something that has actually escalated, even in Fortune 5,000 companies, to an overall view?
Very much so right now, we're seeing it's IT.
Yeah.
Because IT is the only one who would really understand all the implications. I've got to bring together the data. I've got to work with the compliance people. I've got to make sure that it scales. I've got to make sure that it works with our existing systems. So they have to make sure, validate that all is well. They're also being the ones called in to build these things because this is brand new stuff. It is not like in the age of, let's say, Salesforce that got started. The whole idea was you turn it on and you can run all the functionality. At this moment, you're still doing it's a lot of experimentation. It's still a lot of, yes, we're building hundreds of templates, but for most people, many, many people, especially companies that have a large number of IT people themselves, they're trying to build this themselves, which of course we don't think is the greatest thing to do, but then it's IT who's paying the bills, but on behalf of. But then for more departmental work, you are seeing sales organizations doing it on their own because they're doing it right for sales, or marketing just for marketing. Where a service, for example, is usually under operations and IT anyway. So the checks are being signed by IT.
And the checks that you're seeing signed, are they for agent workflows that are under the hood, that is to increase productivity within the organization? Or are you seeing full-blown deployment today? We're at the end of Q2 while we're recording this episode, Q2 2025. Do you see actual use of agent workflows which are client-facing, which are end-to-end? This is not a beta version for a subset of customers, but it's actually available by Fortune 5,000 companies, wherever it is, to the customers, whether enterprises or consumers.
Yeah, like any good IT organization, I'm first looking, can I introduce efficiencies? And
Internally.
Yeah, internal is the place to do efficiencies, but not only internal. I'll get to that in a moment, but certainly internal. If you look at a support agent on the telephone, he or she or they, the last thing they want to be doing is doing those call summaries, which are a pain, and they take a minute or two or three. The same thing with field service technicians. They don't want to be doing a lot of writing. In meetings, I want to look at all the things that were said during it. I want to put it together. I want to analyze it. I want to put it into bullet points, and I want to send it to as an email reminder or put it in my Slack for a follow-up meeting. That's great stuff because you can actually measure. We have clients, for example, they call themselves advisors, and they save maybe 3 minutes per call with a customer. That's money.
Right.
It's extra 3 minutes if they're making $22 an hour, whatever it might be, and they're doing 500 to 1,000 calls in the course of a shift. That's measurable. But then you have things also customer-facing. But where it is strictly, at the moment, where you can bound the problem, meaning I know the provenance of all the data. I can check it for hallucinations. I can check it to make sure. And if I have a doubt, I can do human in the loop. One of the interesting things we're finding is to think, oh my gosh, you have 6% hallucinations. That's awful. And I come back with, do you
How many
underst-
humans?
humans
what's up
have
to- yeah.
like 8. So
Yeah.
we're doing okay.
So you're the, I would say, the guru of CRM, if you will. Not only that, but CRM has been a very substantial part of your journey, right, professionally. And what is CRM? It's customer relationship management. And I've bumped into this quote of an interview that was made by Bessemer with the CEO of AI, where he was saying, if you're a startup founder and you're going to be trying to do something which is native AI CRM, my best wishes to you. Good luck. It's not going to work out. So give us your perspective on whether CRM in it of itself, how would you define, like there's adjacencies to CRM, is an area where a new player can come in. Because one of the things that, maybe distinguishes this cycle from so many of the others is the stronghold that incumbent players have over the future of this technology and how much they actually get in terms of their share of wallet of the clients versus in the past. I don't think anyone is dormant. I don't think Salesforce is dormant. Definitely not any of the hyperscalers is dormant. They're out there to get the opportunity, right? And you can't say, well, these guys neglected mobile, or how, this other company didn't see the internet coming and so on. This time, I think everybody's in the game. So is there a play for a startup to go into CRM as the new breed of CRMs?
Yeah. So you asked a 2-part question because you began with CRM itself.
Yes.
And I'd like to begin by saying that CRM is not a technology whatsoever. The whole idea behind CRM, customer relationship management, is that it's the motif. It's what you do, right? It's the idea that I'm trying to understand the customer. I'm trying to understand their intent. I'm trying to have a relationship with them in the definition of relationship for business, right? So it's not a technology whatsoever. It's a business process.
Right.
And for everyone, it's every single, and people talk about industries. There's no such thing as an industry. There's no healthcare. Healthcare has 6 different components to it. Just there's no manufacturing. There are a dozen different types of manufacturing. So that's the first part of it. And the second part of it, sure, everyone is, of the large players, understand that AI is going to be, or already is, something that infuses every process. There's no question about that. And it also has to join all the customer journey and all the worker journey together. Right. So we already get that. But on the other hand, think about this technology. The way the technology has aligned is that it's very loosely coupled. So you and I could actually sit down and we could build our own application on one specific, either on an industry, something that's missing in an industry. Just think of for physicians, helping the physicians with their onboarding of new patients, helping them with all of the different things. That within itself is something that these large companies, the software application companies, they might not be able to get down to that level of granularity. So it's a perfect opening. And there are probably 20 or 30 ideas I could come up with right now, just thinking we could do those things ourselves and they'd be amazing. On the other hand, also the hyperscalers have never really been that good at business applications. What they're really good at is just that. They're hyper scaling. So they're having the infrastructure and having the AI tools, and there are people who do want to build with those tools. So you have that group, the hyperscalers, and you have the large application people like Salesforce who are really thinking about the end-to-end customer experience. But in the same time, why have we purchased 85 companies? Because innovation always comes to that last millimeter. Someone's always looking and saying, I see, in this area of healthcare, this is missing, or in this journey mapping, this is missing. So there's plenty of area for innovation still to come. And that last millimeter is something that it's going to be easier for someone, 2 or 3 or 6 people in a room, to be that next Instagram, to be that original Skype, to be that original Netflix. All these people who took down the giants who couldn't be taken down. Right. It always happened with 4 or 5 or 6 people.
Well, you're taking me to a question that we typically ask at the end, but it's absolutely great that we're going to be doing this now. If you're a startup founder today, and you're looking at maybe applying this to the areas of CRM or anything that has to do with all the work that you're doing that has to do with customer journey, what are areas you're going to say, again, good luck, it's not going to work for you and why it's not going to work for you. Maybe you don't have access to the distribution, to the data, to the brand that some of the incumbents have, versus just everything that you're seeing. You say, I'm actually seeing an untapped opportunity that is actually not being taken or being eaten up by incumbents. Because one of the issues with this technology is that it's actually pretty easy to go down market, right? If historically, I can say as a VC, I could see opportunities where you'd say, well, the incumbents are only taking, the enterprise. There's no way they're going to go down and service a much, much smaller account because they're going to be afraid to cannibalize them because the margins don't support it. I actually can absolutely see why you would be able to do this now, and that means a lot for startups. So are there areas where you say absolutely no-go versus areas that you think that could be an opening for a startup?
First of all, there's never a no-go because even the largest
right.
businesses, you think, well, that was never going to happen.
Well, a startup would not buy a company like Informatica, congratulations on that, for $8 billion to get access to data, right? Versus Salesforce.
They can't even take you to dinner.
Right. Oh, yeah.
For a lot of reasons. But that's not their goal either. They're usually lean, and they're looking at things that have never been thought of before. And I think about the areas just in drone technologies. Drones and CRM? Yes, of course. Sensors, Internet of Things, all those things have yet to be done. Working with images, working with voice, taking every part of the enterprise and bringing it to a voice future. Even though there are a half a dozen or a dozen companies already in that area, how many companies were in the CRM area? Through the course of my career, I looked at about 700. How many of them remain? Maybe 15 or 20. So yes, there's a tremendous rate of failure. But not all of it's failure. Many of them were acquired by other companies who buy the Oracles, buy the Salesforces, buy the Microsofts, et cetera. And that's the same thing that's going to happen here. You're going to see people with very bright ideas. Even this week, I come to Israel every few months, and my calendar is filled. Between yesterday and today, I'll be meeting with 7 new companies, plus we had our Salesforce World Tour Tel Aviv yesterday. Tremendous innovation. You just see it. And how many people are there? 15 people, 16 people, 10 people.
Right.
And they've got this little niche idea on, gee, I can do this journey mapping. I can see things about how the customer is responding to an offer or how they've responded to a service over time and tell you a bit what I can anticipate them doing next. Like, how do you do that? Well, I'm applying that AI. I'm looking at patterns. You're not exactly doing that, Salesforce, right now. I can do that for you. We see that in every single area. Little bits of, let's say, calibrating our existing things. There are dozens of opportunities from field service to customer service.
But is that, the quintessential VC question, is that a feature or product? When you look back at the startups that you've seen in generative AI over the course of the last 12 months, don't even name names, but are there certain ones where you're saying, these guys actually hit the nail on the head. They got it, and there's stuff that they are doing where they do have a disproportionate advantage, which is extremely hard to get to, right, in generative AI relative to a player of the scale and magnitude of Salesforce. Like anything that sticks to your mind is stuff that you said, this is actually something that we're not doing and is great and is needed?
Yeah. Well, first of all, is it a product or is it a feature? I think that was Larry Ellison who first said that. These companies, they're not products,
right.
They're features. But that's okay. The idea that you don't want to have to think of every single thing. So it's great that they're just features. In fact, most of the local startups look at themselves. Just think about Wiz, right? They a product or a feature? Well, they're going to be inside of Google now. I would have thought of that as a product and it could grow forever. Or Checkpoint continues to be separate. But in this space, I haven't seen products that I would say they're the Salesforce killer, which I'm always looking for.
Yeah.
Startups that would be the ones, and we internally do this. We do this exercise. Let's try to bring down Salesforce. And everyone, of course, should be doing that.
Right.
What would bring us down? And what we're seeing are there.
This is a real standardized exercise that you
within
go through
Salesforce
regularly,
annually, ongoing. Ongoing.
Ongoing.
We're always looking at how would we take down our own company, and of course, it's you have to be very strategic. It's like playing Go, right? You think in that game, you think you're capturing a territory, and suddenly it's all been flipped on you. It's a very, very complex multi-level game, but you have to think what would be the things that would take us down. And what I'm seeing so far is that there are companies that are doing amazing things. They will become parts of the next Google acquisition or the AWS acquisition, Salesforce acquisition. I haven't found one right now that's the one that's going to bring down Microsoft or Google or
Right.
AWS or Salesforce or whomever.
But anything that you have seen that, blew your mind? Maybe not. I'm just curious.
I have no.
No.
That's blown my mind. I've been impressed by a lot of different things. So this,
Right.
I've been impressed by a lot of the things that I'm seeing in analytics. I've seen a lot of things in little pieces that add on to field service. A lot of the drone technology, robotic technologies, voice technologies, but not one thing that I said, this is going to change the entire market.
So, and if you had to give advice to a startup founder, maybe less so about the exact offering, but what it takes for them to make it with a design partner, whether it's Salesforce or any of the enterprises that you're, work with and talk with regularly, what would you say? Because to say you got to have everything covered end to end and ensure that security is compliant with the regulation that doesn't even exist, it is something, to your point about a startup that can't even afford dinner. This is, I think, beyond. But what are imagine you're starting off something, or you need to advise something who's starting off, with the initial seed investment. They need to find the product market fit. They need to find the design partnership. What's the kind of advice that is practical that they should adopt?
Yeah. The first thing I always look at and I do this almost on a daily basis, and I first look at the product, as I did this morning before I got here, and I was talking to this young startup CEO, and I asked him, I was like, well, why this way? Why this way? There are other ways of doing it. Why this way? And why with you? And why now? I have to ask those three questions because the why this way, there are other ways of doing it. Why do you think that your way is a way that I've never seen it done before? When I first saw Salesforce, that's interesting. I can see why you'd want to do it this way, because I had to go to IT, I had to wait around, I'd sit in line for 6 months, or I could take out my credit card and get working. So it was very clear why this way, why with Salesforce. In fact, it wasn't obvious at first why Salesforce, because they don't really have much of the functionality I need. But then I thought, innovator's dilemma. They do have enough that I could see it's worth the trade-off, and over time, let's see what will come. And why now? It's the idea. Is there an urgency behind it? What is the urgency? Because people choose the 3 projects that they need to do now. And I'm telling them, if you can't knock out one of those 3 projects and replace it with yours, they're just going to move on. They'll do some kind of little work with you, but you're never going to scale a company unless you can get to the position where someone looks at your product and says, oh my gosh, it's the classic FUD that you learned back in school, right? It's got to be fear. I'm looking at something and my gosh, that now I'm afraid. And it's urgent. And if I don't change now, you think about Xerox or Kodak or Blockbuster, they all saw it, but they didn't fear, they didn't see it was urgent, and it didn't introduce any doubt into them. It's like, I'm just hosed if I don't change the way I do things. And if they can't answer those questions and make me feel, okay, wow, we're going to invest in them, then we move on to something else. It's cute, it's cool, they're smart,
Right.
but they haven't caused me to move from this place. I always say, what's going to make me change? It's going to show me nirvana. It's try to light me on fire, or do both. Right. Ideally, show me nirvana and light me on fire. I'm going to move.
Yeah. So you're a startup founder, and it's clear to you because you spoke to Michael on the other side, and it's clear that you need to figure out that the need is imminent by the enterprise. How do you actually do this? Again, it's a puny startup coming out, maybe based out of Tel Aviv, maybe based out of somewhere else, and you actually need to understand that this will substitute something else. Mm-hmm. That this is, to your point, something which is absolutely a must. But to your earlier point, it's not that enterprises have a clear view of how they want to deploy agents. So someone who's going to be offering agent workflows, again, as a founder, what would you recommend in terms of their market exploration? How do they understand that they're on to something in terms of product market fit?
Generally, you're just going around. Right? You really talk about kismet, but it's generally because you were out there and you noticed something in your own experience. And the company we started, which we started in Germany, it happened. And I'm not going to waste your time on the story, but we just saw, oh my gosh, that company couldn't tell the difference between this woman as a person who's an individual and the person. She was the same woman who ordered all of the events for a large manufacturing company. When she went to this hotel, they treated her like dirt because they thought she was the individual. They couldn't tie her to the entity that spent millions of dollars with them each year. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's a product. What if I could bring together the identity?
German hospitality, right?
It was German
Yes.
hospitality. It didn't quite work that way. But then it gave us the idea, which was the idea of identity. We called it point because we were bringing together your guy, but you're also a guy from TPY Capital. You're also a guy over here. I got to bring them together so I know how to treat you appropriately. I want to personalize things. But my point is that it's generally from looking around. The people who I meet here, it's all because they heard from someone or they experienced something. They were on a trip or they were interacting with the business and they saw that they're doing something that is far below the expectations. And suddenly it gets really, really exciting to them. If you're totally excited and you have this total inspiration, you're going to get it. But it's not that you went to school for this. None of this did they learn in school.
But is there anything which is endemic, which is special to the deployment of this kind of technology as a startup? Given how everything is different, how do you convince, how do you introduce, how do you query potential clients about what they need when we know that this is going to be embedded in everything, and yet is sometimes very hard to visualize how the future is going to look like, not in 3 years' time, but in 3 quarters' time even. So is there anything that this founder should be doing as they obviously they should bring a demo, but anything to really figure out whether this is something that there's going to be a budget against when budgets are evolving so fast? Yeah. I know it's a tough one, but that's
it's
major
really,
one.
It's an interesting question because I was listening the other day to someone who said, right now, what do you have to do? It's AI. You're not getting it. You're not getting that if you don't jump in right this moment, you're going to lose. And it's like you have to burn the bridge behind you and put the engine in full throttle, even if you don't know where you're going. And that's probably where you are today. And part of it is bringing that moment of, let me show you, if you do this way, let me show you how this is going to change. It's going to move the needle on your business. If you can do that, for example, some of the companies here in the area of security, they say, let me show you an exposure you had without us that you didn't even know it. We helped you stay safe. And suddenly the business is, okay, I have to buy this product. In marketing, the same way. Look at this. By understanding the intent of the customer, I managed to raise your marketing by 3%. 3%, that's enormous. It's when they come to someone and show them, let me show you, there's a new way of doing this, and if you don't take this, you're going to be number 2. Being number 2 is pretty lousy. No one comes home and says, look, Mom, I was number 2. And people who manage to get that kind of excitement and also put that fear in them, they win every time.
So before we wrap up, because before I know it, we have to actually wrap up, any other words of departure for founders in this space when you see so many of them? What do you think is going to be kind of a breakthrough workflow for those developing agent workflows that is going to make them distinctive relative to your point about failure rate? So many of the startups that actually fail.
Yeah. The ones I think are going to succeed are the ones who really think about themselves as interchangeable, meaning they can fit into any ecosystem, whether it's going to be any of the hyperscalers. And the other thing is that to build something that you can show is going to be essential. It's going to be something that gives a little inspiration. Because remember, IT people is a very boring job otherwise. This is the most exciting time to be a developer or an IT, but also in business, the idea that you can really change the future direction of business with AI, which you are. And that's what's so exciting when you bring in an idea and say, hey, guess what? I was working with a company the other day. They have 120 support agents. I'm like, what if you have 20 human agents and 100 AI agents, and you're doing onboarding of the AI agent just like you did with the human, and you train them, you do the onboarding, you're always educating them. And what if? And the company that builds that product and gets them excited about that says, holy man, you're giving me a whole new way of thinking of the world. You're saying AI agents are like humans? In a sense, they need the same things. And guess what? You're going to have new jobs, people who are looking at content development who are going to be prompt engineers, but they're going to be doing all of the optimization of all the processes. And that's you, Mr. Startup Company, Mrs. Startup Company. That's you who's delivering that change.
So I got to ask another question. Again, we're going off script, but to your point about talent and labor, projecting you 2 years from now, what do you think is going to be the biggest surprise about labor or functions? I was on a panel back in London a few weeks ago, and I was asked a question like this, and I said, actually, I think the issue of we being augmented, it's a little bit of a sweet talk, but there are actually going to be so many jobs eliminated, and whether that's good or bad, you could make your own judgment about where the world is going. But I can absolutely see why full-blown those jobs that we're saying, you're going to have 20 human agents and 100, AI, CRM, call it, or customer service agents. Well, maybe you're going to have just one human supervisor, kind of supervising, and all the rest are agents. Where do you think there might be the biggest surprise? Maybe it's exactly the opposite of what I'm describing. If you look 2 years ahead, in terms of job placements and job displacements.
Yeah, and I think job change is awesome because I'm glad that people aren't in the fields anymore getting ringworm, and I'm glad they're not in factories dying at the age of 40 from terrible lives and being exhausted. I think it's awesome. I think it's great that you're not going to have people who from the beginning never wanted to be call center agents. They did it because there was no other opportunity. Or data entry people. This is amazing that they're not doing this anymore. What is really cool is look at what happened going all the way back to the agricultural era. There were 20 different types of jobs now. And just look at companies like Adama here in Israel. They're going into crop protection. They're going to seed protection. There are all sorts of AI that goes into the crops. Or Netafim, people develop all sorts of amazing things that make all of agriculture better. Look at health, life sciences, helping people's lives, going down to the genetic level and able to say, I can see how I can change an entire generation of people. The same thing is going to be with sales and service and marketing. They're already evolving. I already see people now who are saying, I'm not hiring for today. I'm hiring these people with a whole new set of skills because I know she's going to be the content developer. I know she's going to be the data analytics person. I know she's going to be the new brand manager. She's going to embed that into everything I say to my customers during the support operation. They're going to feed it back into marketing so I can now do marketing inside of service like our client Vivint in the United States is doing, or Veolia in waste management, doing amazing things where there are people who are dragging out toxic waste are now using their eyes, using the AI to create greater marketing campaigns personalized right for that business. Right. So I see all these new jobs opening up, which are far more exciting, far more interesting, far more higher pay. And again, using augmented AI as we are right now.
Well, your enthusiasm is contagious. I hope more than bio weapons are going to be. And I really thank you for the time, Michael. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you for listening to AI Aideation, TPY Capital's podcast for entrepreneurs in the worlds of generative AI. We hope you enjoyed the episode and best of luck in your entrepreneurship journey. You can find all the episodes in Hebrew, for the most part, on the leading podcast platforms. And a big thank you for Google for Startups for the wonderful studio and our editor, Noah Ben Moshe. I'm Guy Mann. See you in the next episode.